Welcome to Week 15 of Jets Final Drive. I'm your host, Jeane Coakley, like always, alongside SNY NFL insider Connor Hughes. And we got the ringers, John Jastremski, on. JJ, we get to talk about a win with you today.
What a concept. And Jeane, I'm in a pleasant mood because not only did the Jets go and take down the Jacksonville Jaguars, I am very appreciative for the fact that the Jets, at the end of this game, instead of taking the 3 kneel downs and kicking the field goal and bleeding it to 20 seconds, they found a way to score that touchdown that, let's just say, Jeane, was significant to some and significant to me. So I'm happy about it. Amen.
How's that wallet? You got a little more money in that wallet?
A little more. I gave it right back when Indianapolis didn't cooperate against the Broncos. But that is life on a football Sunday for your boy.
All right. Well, guys, just a reminder, you can find the audio version of Jets Final Drive on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. So the Jets got back in the win column, beating the Jags 32-25, thanks to Davante Adams' massive performance. 2 touchdowns and 198 yards, most of it coming in the second half, which is crazy. Adams also hit a milestone with his 100th career touchdown, 81 of those from Aaron Rodgers. All right, so guys, we finally got to see the Jets' vintage Aaron Rodgers, Davante Adams, everybody has been waiting for. Why did it take so long? Connor, I'll let you go.
Well, I think the biggest thing, well, he's healthy. I think that's the most significant thing. I mean, Aaron Rodgers, I was told yesterday, actually by a source within the Jets building, that he was playing earlier this season with a hamstring that was the most significant injury that a hamstring can be sustained or endure that still involves the hamstring being attached to the body. So that's how bad this hamstring was for Aaron Rodgers. And I actually said to the source, I was like, why didn't you guys come out and say this? You knew it. He was just on the injury report, the hamstring. He's going to play limited in practice. But, if he was dealing with this, you guys should have come out and told people and let people know what he was enduring. I know injuries aren't an excuse, yada, 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 but it would have explained some of Aaron Rodgers' struggles earlier this season. Because over these last 3-4 weeks, what you've seen is a guy that can move around within the pocket. You've seen a guy that can extend plays. You've seen a guy that can get out a little bit and move and run. And also those deep passes that have now come back and been reintroduced to the Jets offense. I think a large part of it is that Aaron Rodgers is trusting himself from the waist down and that he can plant and drive when he wasn't necessarily able to do that earlier in the year.
And JJ, he led the team in rushing yesterday.
Yeah, he moved around really well, and I had an opportunity to see him in South Florida last week take on the Dolphins. That was the best I've seen Aaron Rodgers, I feel, move around all year. He was able to buy time. Obviously, the receivers have come to life the last 2 weeks, and, Jeane, in many ways, it's the classic too little, too late for a team that had major aspirations. They doubled down on those aspirations when they made the Davante Adams trade, and let's be real, when they made the Davante Adams trade, they thought they were going to have a lot more days like the ones we saw each of the last 2 weeks, where that chemistry is on full display, where you see Rodgers and Adams knowing exactly what each other wants to do, and the Jet offense is able to thrive because of it. And I think the interesting wrinkle and dynamic for me now is, okay, Davante Adams has a huge cap hit for next season. We all know Aaron Rodgers' future has been dissected every which way imaginable. Connor, you probably can speak to this better than I can, but the way I kind of look at the Rodgers-Adams partnership with the Jets, I feel like either both of these guys find their way back. I can't live in a world where either Aaron Rodgers is gone and Davante Adams is back, or Aaron Rodgers is back and Davante Adams is gone. Is it basically a package deal with these two guys for the Jets in 2025? That's kind of the way I'm reading it with their relationship. I know money obviously talks. Is it both or none for 2025? That's my question.
Yeah,
and
from my
I'm
understanding.
Add another question with that, Connor. Should they run it back with them?
Well, that's tough to say. I mean, well, first of all, it's pretty much a package deal. I mean, the whole reason why Davante Adams is here with the Jets is because he wanted to play with the only reason Davante Adams is here with the Jets is because he wanted to play with Aaron Rodgers. That's why he's back here. That's why he came to New York. He didn't want to play with Tyrod Taylor. He didn't want to play with a rookie quarterback. He wanted to play with Rodgers. And if you look at the last places that Davante Adams has gone when he went to the Raiders for the first time, and then this most recent time when he was looking for a new team again. The other team that was involved in the Davante Adams sweepstakes, it wasn't the Buffalo Bills, despite the fact they needed a receiver. It was the New Orleans Saints because why? Davante Adams wanted to go to a quarterback that he knew, and that quarterback was Derek Carr. That's why he went to the Raiders in the first place as well. So if Rodgers ends up leaving by either the Jets letting him go and he goes plays elsewhere, I just can't see Davante Adams at this stage in his career, having never won a championship before, just spinning his tires for a team that very clearly will not have playoff or Super Bowl aspirations next year if they're starting Tyrod Taylor as a bridge to a rookie quarterback. Should they come back, Jeane, I'll be honest with you. I know that I was watching this game, and I got a chance to watch it again this morning because I covered the Giants yesterday. But I do think that it is very important to say that as good as Aaron Rodgers looked against the Jacksonville Jaguars, as good as Davante Adams looked against the Jacksonville Jaguars, as nice as it was to see this offense finally resemble the one that we saw at different points in training camp that we thought we were going to be seeing every single week, every single Sunday against the best teams in the league that was going to lead the Jets into the playoffs and make an eventual run, they did do it against the Jacksonville Jaguars, a team that was 3-10, a team that possesses the worst pass defense in the entire NFL. So context here is needed. And Aaron Rodgers a couple weeks ago, when Andy Vasquez asked him if he believes these final few weeks he can go out there and prove to the Jets that he deserves to come back, Rodgers was insulted by that question. Not at Andy for asking it, but just the fact that that's something that's going to be out there. 4-time MVP, Super Bowl champion. He doesn't need to show anything else. I think the book's already written on Rodgers and what the Jets want to do. The people that he needs to convince are ownership, and if ownership wants to bring him back, or ultimately the next GM and head coach.
All right, let's move on to the defense now because Sauce Gardner sealed the game with his first interception since his rookie season. After the game, he told me the moment was like he was up there with the draft because he was able to hand the ball off to his mom. His brother was there, his nephew. You could just feel the excitement. And then also when I was talking to Jamie and Sherwood after the game, he was holding up the W sign. It was like a full-on like WWE moment. You could just see the joy and the excitement in these guys. Well, some Jets fans are obviously upset that beating the 3-11 Jags hurts the draft position. But seeing these players, the excitement and the confidence back in these players, despite not being in the playoff contention, how important are these games for rebuilding that confidence and winning a culture among these young players? JJ, I'll let you start.
So to me, Jeane, listen, they're not in a position like they were a couple of years ago where the entire draft focus is on like Trevor Lawrence, for example. You know, the Jets, there's too much talent on the roster to look at some of the other just hideous football teams that there are throughout the NFL and think, all right, the Jets are going to end up with the number 1 or the number 2 pick. But I got to take Sauce Gardner to task here. And I watched the interview that you did with him yesterday on SNY, and I understand it was a big moment for him. There's no love lost with Mac Jones. There was an incident with Mac Jones when he was a member of the New England Patriots. But can I see Sauce Gardner have a game like I saw Derek Stingley have yesterday for the Houston Texans? And maybe I'm salty on this because I watched him absolutely destroy Tua and the Miami Dolphins and basically end their season. He completely dominated Tyreek Hill, where at the end of the game, with the game on the line, he took the ball away. This was not an interception where basically Mac Jones is thrown up and heaving it up, and it's the first time we're talking about Sauce going and getting an interception. Now, let me make something clear, Jeane. 2022 and 2023, Sauce Gardner was an all-pro player. There's no getting around that. There's no denying it. He played at a top-notch level. Even if I watched this game against Jacksonville, gang, I didn't think he was particularly good in this game. He's committing penalties. He's struggling guarding Brian Thomas. And I just have a much higher standard for Sauce when he's talking about the media haters. I know he's probably looking at me and he's looking at a lot of other folks that talk about the team and cover the team. Sauce, I'm sorry. You were a top 10 pick. You're a guy who's played an all-pro level. You have not played at that level this year. So one interception when the team is 3-10 is not all of a sudden going to validate your season. So, Jeane, good reporting, by the way, because you gave me a lot to talk about yesterday on my podcast. But I'm sorry, Sauce. I need to see you do it for the full year. You haven't done it this season.
And the interception, too, it wasn't spectacular in any way, shape, or form. I mean, it was one I
watched.
watched.
Their confidence, because he has lost some confidence.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I don't know. I've been around losing teams enough, Jeane, that we've seen some late season. You too. I mean, we've seen some late wins No, I don't believe there is legitimate carryover from the end of one year into the next. I mean, the Detroit Lions experienced carryover because they're a really damn good football team with really damn good coaches and really damn good players, and they go out there and they kick everybody's butt. Where was the carryover for the Jets from 2020 to 2021 or 2021 to 2022 or 2022 to 2023? I mean, we see these late season wins. It doesn't matter. Now, for the people that are saying like, oh my God, no, this is going to tank our draft pick. This is going to be the worst thing in the world. Look, there are dynamic, dominant players found everywhere. You saw the Jets got a first-hand look at one in Brian Thomas, the electric receiver for the Jacksonville Jaguars. How many picks after Marvin Harrison was he selected? Harrison was the, oh my God, we can't miss him. Harrison has more games of 3 or fewer catches, 6, than he does 100-yard games this season, 2. So you can find talent all over the draft. You just need the person to identify that talent and then go out there and get that talent. That's where the Jets have struggled so much, specifically just over the last 10, 12, 13 years, and one of the reasons why they're in this rut. But look, I feel good that Jamie Sherwood feels good and he was happy. Obviously, this is going to be a happy locker room this week. There are going to be guys feeling good about themselves, but ultimately this does not matter. And honestly, when I saw Sauce make that comment and I saw the interview, I love Sauce. I have a great relationship with him. He's a really, really good dude. But I do think that interception, it wasn't like one where he jumped the route, got in front of the receiver, baited the quarterback, caught the pass, and ran it and then dropped down. I mean, it was I still don't even know why Mac Jones threw it. This is one of the reasons why Mac Jones just isn't good at football. But also, Mac Jones torched the Jets secondary for the most of those 4 quarters before that throw. So, no, I'm not a believer necessarily in too much carrying from one season over the next because, hell, I mean, we've seen the Jets finish strong before, and it hasn't made any big of a difference the next year.
I just love it that as a mom, as a mother, his mom was in the stands, and his mom got the ball. That's all I cared about.
Yeah.
That was a good touch. Okay. So
Yeah.
let me have that moment as a mom. Thank you. All right, moving on.
It's all you, Jeane. There you go. The moment is yours.
The Jets are without key players on both sides of the ball, which allowed some of their younger guys to get additional playing time. Tyler Conklin is out. Shout out, by the way. Speaking of a parent, he's now a dad. Congrats to him.
Yeah, congratulations, Tyler.
Yes, and Scotty.
And Scotty.
Yes, congrats. That's awesome. All right, so are you surprised that the Jets didn't feature third-year tight end Jeremy Rutgers in the passing game more, JJ?
Not necessarily, Jeane, because this offense has really become the Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson show. And I think that has been on full display the last 2 games where those 2 guys just flat out feasted. They had great success against the Miami Dolphins. Garrett Wilson was able to do whatever he wanted to do against Miami 2 weeks ago. And if you look at this game in the second half, it felt like Aaron Rodgers, despite, maybe there's a matchup here, maybe there's a matchup there, I'm going to go to what I feel the best about. I'm going to go with what I trust the most. And those 2 guys, Adams and Wilson, were winning so many individual one-on-one matches. They're going to throw him the ball. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is going to look at Davante Adams wide open down the field. He's going to say, yeah, I'm going to go and throw him the football. And, Jeane, to be honest, I can't really fault them if they're trying to go and win the game. And Davante Adams goes for almost 200 yards of receiving yards. I can't necessarily say Aaron Rodgers was wrong for doing so. So, yeah, I think there's chances and opportunities for younger players to have chances to go and do their thing over the next 3 weeks. But specifically a wide receiver, Garrett Wilson's a guy you want to pay maybe a lot of money to in the offseason next year or whatever it might be. Davante Adams you traded for. He's with Aaron Rodgers. They're getting the football.
Well, Connor, do you think it's Allbrook's responsibility to kind of get these younger players more in the mix these next 3 games, even though he might not be the coach next year?
No, 100%. I mean, I remember talking to Todd Bowles about this, and he admitted, too, that he was going to get, when he was the head coach towards the end, once the Jets are eliminated, get your younger players in there. That's why it makes absolutely no sense to me why Malachi Corley is not playing for the Jets. This is a guy you invested a premium draft pick in. This is a guy who has a skill set. This is a guy who I remember talking to Robert Saleh about this, said he needs reps. That's what he needs. He needs reps on reps on reps. He needs experience. That's where you're going to see him grow and get better. And I remember Robert telling me he's only going to be playing a couple of snaps to begin the season, but by the end of the year, they believed he was going to have a significant role on this offense. Now, Robert Saleh has since been fired, and this is obviously a new person calling the plays in Todd Downing. But the fact that Corley, who is somebody that Aaron Rodgers himself slammed the table to get drafted, has now just been pushed aside and isn't even used. Jeane, we saw that end around where he infamously dropped the ball before the end zone. He has a legitimate skill set. Like, he has ability. Like, I remember he got the ball, and all of us were like, whoa, who was that dude? Like, do you see that guy take off running? Like, that was really impressive. So he needs to be on the field. I think Ruckert needs to continue to play. I think Quantez Stiger should continue to play. I mean, these are guys that when DJ Reed is gone, when Tyler Conklin is gone, when the Jets are looking for players or looking at holes on this roster that they potentially need to fill next offseason, these are guys that they can say, you know what? Stiger's actually showed us some stuff towards the end of last year. He might actually be an option. We're not just going to completely close the door, not going to bring in a veteran to compete with him, but we might have an option there. Or tight end, you know what? Maybe we can save some money and stick with Ruckert. I mean, now why Ruckert wasn't more involved again? You had guys like Wilson going off. You had guys like Lazard, who's always going to get us targets from Rodgers. And obviously Adams having a borderline career day out there. So you're going to see those guys get the ball a lot. But I do think that it should be an initiative forced down from the top of the Jets. I'm talking ownership on Ulbrich and this staff to get the young players experience, because you need to start evaluating them to see who's going to be difference makers next year and beyond.
Well, I'm sure Corley now is pretty thankful that Jonathan Taylor of the Colts now did the same thing that he did.
Yeah.
So he's not the only one, and at least Corley was a rookie and he did it.
Yeah.
All right, guys, moving on to topic number 4. The Jets almost got themselves into a late game bid with the with a curious coaching decision. They ran the ball into the end zone rather than taking a knee and running the clock out, do a little chip shot field goal, which you were talking about earlier, JJ, because, you're grateful they did that. What do you think that the Jets were wanting the easy points and trusting their defense, or was that just a lack of faith in their special teams' ability to execute the game-winning field goal?
Well, listen, Jeane, despite the fact that I was very happy about the outcome, it was a terrible way to handle the final 2 minutes of the game. Because basically, if you go inside the 5-yard line...
Not to interrupt you, JJ, but you even heard Davante say, I stopped because I wasn't sure what you wanted to do. He could have got
100%.
that.
Yeah, there was confusion there. And I think it's the sort of situation, Jeane, if this team was in playoff contention and we were talking about this being a must-win game for the Jets, we would be roasting Coach Ulbrich and the coaching staff to the high heavens for not managing the clock properly. But when you're in a 3-10 situation, I have to wonder if there was part of the, whatever, let's just go and score a touchdown feel. I'm not saying that's right. I'm not saying that's wrong. But I do have to wonder if that's triggered somewhat. But as far as the proper way to handle the clock over the final 2 minutes of the game, making a team, bleed it down, giving a team as little a chance to go and win a game. Like, I think back to the game the Jets won miraculously in Cleveland a couple of years ago with Joe Flacco, where it was one of the most insane finishes to a game you'll ever see. And Nick Chubb had not the exact same proposition, but had a chance to do so, milk clock, and ended up scoring a touchdown. In this NFL, in this day and age where teams could throw the ball, defensive penalties, weird things happen at the end of these games. You want to maximize your mathematical probability to go and win the game. Scoring a touchdown there in that spot didn't necessarily do it.
No, that was a disaster. That was a disaster in every way, shape, and form. There's no excusing it. There is no excuse for it. I mean, I think even Jeff Ulbrich's reasoning after the game was even worse. And I like Jeff a lot, and I believe that he can still be a good head coach in the NFL. But this was an example of a coach that's just not ready yet. I mean, saying, I wanted points, I wanted to be aggressive. No, you want to go win the damn game. Like, no, that was terrible. And again, Ulbrich was on the sideline for that Browns game when Nick Chubb scored, and then the Jets had a chance, and they ended up winning that game. I mean, and this wasn't like the Jets escaped it. It was no big deal. The Jaguars went 3 and out, and then Mac Jones threw an interception. No, the Jaguars went all the way down to the Jets' 44-yard line, had a 3rd and 1 with plenty of time left on the clock to still score a touchdown and win the game. I mean, I saw it when Davante Adams went down at the 1, and then I saw the replay, because again, I was covering the Giants game as well. I was immediately like, oh, smart move by a savvy player. The Jets are going to run it 2 or 3 times, eat some clock, score, then it'll be over and it'll be done. The fact that they just went ahead and scored and left the Jaguars that much time, I mean, look, there have been mistakes that have been made by the Jets organization this year. I think what they did with firing Robert when they fired Robert, you're starting to see the resounding impact of it at different points throughout the year. I think the discipline continuing to be a problem is an example of that. I think the game management is an example of that. I think the deterioration and continued deterioration of the defense is an example of that. But this clock management, this is another example of just that decision to move on from Robert being so rash and so quick and just so reactionary that it was a mistake and it should not have been done. Because, again, there is just... I don't know if the Jets are a playoff team with Robert. I don't. But I believe that they are a significantly better team right now than they are. And it's just because I don't think they have a true captain leading the ship right now. And one day that could be Jeff Ulbrich. One day Jeff Ulbrich could be a good head coach in the NFL. It's just not there yet. And maybe that's because he didn't have a full off season to get his guys in place. Maybe it's because he didn't have a full off season of preparing himself to be a head coach. He was just thrown into the fire and say, hey, you're a head coach now. Go do it. It's been a disaster. And the Jets are lucky this one didn't go up and nip him in the butt, because it was inexcusable and a horrendous decision, especially for a staff, most of them, especially on the defensive side of the ball, and Jeff Ulbrich himself, who experienced the downside of this when they lost that game or when they beat the Browns a couple years ago. It's just, it cannot happen. It's mind-boggling. And again, the reasoning and the justification after it of, I want it to be aggressive, that's not good enough. That's just not cutting it. But like JJ said, it also doesn't matter, because the Jets are going to have a brand new coach, brand new GM, brand new quarterback, and all that in a few months anyway.
Well, that's a great lead-in to our next topic, Jets GM search, because there's reports that have surfaced that the Jets have started their GM search, with interviews expected for former Titans GM John Robinson and ESPN analyst Louis Riddick, who has front office experience with Philadelphia and Washington. Connor, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts on these two potential hires? And the reason we can't interview them is because we're in season.
Yeah, I think that this is more just the Jets talking to people that they're going to talk to. I mean, they have basically a million Titans coaches on their staff, so sure, bring in Robinson and talk to him for a little bit. He obviously built a pretty good team in Tennessee for a while. There does have a relationship with Mike Vrabel where those two worked together for a while. I do not believe in any way, shape, or form that they're going to, getting Robinson as GM would be the precursor. Oh, we're also going to get Mike Vrabel. I don't think that's the case at all. But Riddick is somebody that I think is very fascinating. That's an outside-the-box hire, somebody who's gotten interviews before. I know he's interviewed a handful of times with the Giants as well and other teams around the league. Hasn't gotten that job, but he's somebody that's very well respected around the NFL. But I don't believe that this is a situation where it's like, oh, these guys are the front runners. I just think these are the guys who right now are available to be interviewed, and that's why they're being interviewed.
Can I acknowledge that I'm a sucker for good content on TV and on social media? I think Louis Riddick knows his stuff. Now,
I do too. I do like him. Yes.
Does that mean he's going to be a great GM? I don't have the slightest idea. But the fact that I see his stances, I hear his takes, I agree with his football philosophy, and you throw in the fact, gang, we're not talking about somebody that has never done it before. He's worked in the Philadelphia Eagles front office. He's been in the war rooms before. I'm intrigued by the idea. I'm wondering when a team is going to give Louis Riddick a chance to go and run the show. There's a team down in South Florida that might be looking for a new GM. I'd absolutely make that call. I wouldn't think twice about it. So that's interesting. And Connor, I'm glad that you brought up Robinson and the dynamic with Mike Vrabel. Because to me, Mike Vrabel is the sort of program builder that the Jets desperately need. That guy is all ball, no nonsense, all sorts of accountability. And I would have been trying to connect the dots, if indeed Robinson got the job, what that would mean for Vrabel, who is probably going to be the most highly touted coaching candidate that's out there. I have to assume. Him and Ben Johnson with the Detroit Lions, that's a guy I'd love running my program. So I'm kind of curious to see, okay, who would the GM be that would lead me to Mike Vrabel? Because if I'm a Jet fan, I'm very happy about that.
Yeah, and Vrabel is... Real quick, Jeane, is just from everything that I have been told from talking to multiple people around the NFL, they believe that look, I said this after the Bill Belichick stuff, which we're going to get to in a second here, Jeane. I know, but from everybody that I have talked to, this is going to be a very thorough search for the Jets, all that stuff. But the name that is kind of here, and then the rest of the pack, from my understanding, it is Mike Vrabel. And I know the Jets have already put out their feelers to gauge interest, if Vrabel would be interested in the Jets, if there's anything there that he would want the job or take the job or anything like that. But he is somebody that, from my understanding, is atop the Jets' wish list. And it would not surprise me at all if the Jets actually went to Vrabel, and one of the things to try to get him to be their head coach was they said, look, we'll hire you, and then we'll keep you involved in our search for the general manager. Now, Robinson, again, I don't believe that is a precursor to get Vrabel. Look, those guys know each other. Those guys work together. It's not like they're best friends. It's not like they're vacationing together. It's not like these guys are, the godfather of another one's kid. Like they work together. That's a connection, but I don't get the sense that they're like BFFs or anything like that. But I do believe that if Vrabel is the top person for the Jets, and they will not be the only one who has Vrabel atop their wish list, in the effort to do everything they can to get him, it wouldn't surprise me to say, look, let's get you involved in the GM search as well.
Well, and JJ, real quick, just a little more on this topic. Should the Jets hire a GM first before finding a coach? That kind of goes with the whole, well, if you get Robinson, does Vrabel come in? Or do you try enticing head coaches that come with the plan of allowing them to bring along a GM they want?
I'm going to give you a very complicated, wishy-washy answer, Jeane. If Mike Vrabel is willing to come to the Jets, I am more than willing to hire Mike Vrabel first and bring in a GM who is going to accommodate him. I'm A-okay with that. Normally, I wouldn't be if we're talking about somebody who has not done the job before.
Vrabel's the only head coach you let that happen for.
Correct, yes, because he commands instant credibility. Where no knock on whoever you might bring in as a candidate. Ben Johnson, if he's interested. Aaron Glenn, if he's interested. We're talking about folks that have never been NFL head coaches before. So there's an entirely different set of circumstances. Vrabel's done it. He's taken teams to the playoffs. His teams are well coached. He overachieves. That, to me, is my kind of counter to all of that, if that makes sense.
All right, got you. All right, Connor, you mentioned the Bill Belichick that before he took you reported that before he took the UNC coaching job, he actually reached out to the Jets if they had interest in interviewing him for the head coach job. Give the historical drama between Woody Johnson and Belichick. I think there was a point when Belichick wouldn't even say the Jets' name, right? I think there was like years we wouldn't even say the Jets.
They did the Bill for Bill documentary. They wouldn't go in the Jets locker room. They did the Bill for Bill. Yeah.
Do you think this would have really worked out? I mean, what is that? Come on. I don't understand it. Please explain.
Well, yeah, so give Diana Rossini of The Athletic a lot of credit for this one. She's the one who broke the story. And in fact, when it first came out, I saw it. I was like, no damn way. Like Diana is very, very good at what she does, and I trust almost everything that comes out of her mouth or that she writes. But this was one of those things where like I saw it and I was like in my head immediately like, no freaking way. Not that I didn't believe Diana, but just the story seemed so absurd and ridiculous that I was like, it can't be true. There's no way that it can be true. I called two different people at the Jets. They both confirmed the story, and then a second source said, hey, here's one that's better for you. Bill is the one who called us. So I think that what this was, and let's be honest, Bill Belichick didn't suddenly develop an immense love for the Jets organization. He didn't suddenly knock on Woody Johnson's door, walk in and with a bottle of bourbon and say, hey guys, let's bury the hatch here and let's become best friends now. That is not the situation. He still has the feelings that he's had for this organization, still has his feelings that he had for Woody Johnson. All of that is why it's kind of like, how is this even possible? What this tells me, Jeane, and this is reading very clearly between the lines, is that the opportunities that Bill Belichick has expected to be there for him on the NFL level when he left the Patriots, they have not been there. And this discussion with the Jets, basically it was Bill calling them to express interest in their head coaching vacancy and judge whether or not the Jets had an interest in Bill Belichick as well. What the Jets told him is that, look, we'll go through the interview process, but we're not just going to hand you the job right now in December. We're not just going to be like, oh, wow, Bill Belichick called us, sweet, yeah, here, the job is yours. This is going to be a thorough search. The Jets are going to talk to experienced people, inexperienced people. They're going to cast a very wide net, and then judging off of those interviews that they have, they are going to identify the right candidate that they believe is going to lift them out of this 14-year playoff drought, and then they're going to do everything that they can to put that man on their sideline. If that ended up being Bill Belichick, great. If it ended up being Mike Vrabel, Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn, or a number of these other candidates they're going to speak to, it could be that as well. I don't think that Bill Belichick, knowing how prideful he is, knowing how much it probably took for him to even call the Jets, I don't think that he was willing to go through another year like last year where he went all in for the Falcons job and didn't get it. For him to go all in for the Jets job and not get it, the Giants job, not get it, I don't think his ego could handle that. So when the Jets said, look, we'll talk to you, but we're not totally in on this, that's when he went to UNC.
JJ, before I ask you a question, I have to say I love Samantha, I don't know who did this, our producer, the heel turn That's like straight up WWE, that's right up my alley. Anyways, JJ, how much level control would Woody be willing to relinquish to get the hire he wants at coach or GM?
I'd have to think he'd be more than willing, Jeane. I mean, they have the longest drought of any team in professional sports when it comes to making the playoffs. If I own the team and somebody, for example, like Mike Vrabel came my way and was more than willing to say, hey, this is how we need to do things, I'd be willing to listen. That to me is the way Woody Johnson should approach this. Be willing to listen. And I think Connor nailed it when it comes to Belichick. I think Belichick wanted to be in the NFL, but he didn't want to be embarrassed. And last year, he was absolutely embarrassed. He thought he was getting this job. He thought he was getting that job. And he was left at the altar. And this is the greatest NFL head coach of all time. And he wasn't going to deal with that. And I also think the reason he called the Jets, he doesn't love Robert Kraft at this point in time. So I'm sure that dangling carrot of, hey, I have the opportunity to stick it to my former boss twice a year, all of a sudden becomes appealing. But when you're talking about being one of many, Bill Belichick with his history with the Jets, that was going to go out the window. And now he can go and have some fun in the ACC with Dabo and Franny Brown and see what he can do at North Carolina. I'm intrigued.
Yeah, so am I. The NIL deal, good luck with that, Bill. By the way, it was Corey. I got to give him the shout out for the heel turn graphic design. Great name. Before we get out of here, Connor, I know you were on the road in Jacksonville, but dude, it has to be top 10, the cafe, the food, because they have awesome waffles.
Yeah, so Jacksonville used to be only one. Well, Jacksonville used to only be one spot above New Orleans, which you would think New Orleans has incredible food. Their press box would be great. No, their press box is horrendous. Like the food in that press box at the Superdome or whatever it's called, I forget, or Mercedes-Benz. I can't remember which one's Atlanta, which one's New Orleans, but it's a disaster. Jacksonville was only one spot above that. In fact, Jeane, I remember us going to a Jaguar game in like 2016. Walking in, looking at the cafeteria, and having them have like some kind of meat dish in the middle with like sauce, and all of us looked and we were like, "What is that? Well, we're not eating that. What is that?" So they received such immense criticism. Actually, I heard from the Press Box Food Power Rankings got their attention, and then also someone in Philadelphia does something very similar in print that got their attention. That Jacksonville actually completely revamped their entire press box spread like 3 or 4 years ago. I went back a couple years ago with the Giants. I think it was last year or the year before. And I went in there, and they actually moved up. They're number 11 right now in the Press Box Food Power Rankings for me. I looked it up, and a big reason for it is their spread has completely changed, and also the ice cream machine. The soft serve ice cream machine is a really good touch.
Yeah, but the homemade waffles, you make your own waffles. You know the ones that like the
Marriott's
or like you turn the thing.
That you used to in.
By the way, Jeane, you might be able to comment. I heard someone was talking trash. Someone was trashing me on the Jets beat.
You blamed me and Andy.
Yeah, I did.
It wasn't us.
Yeah. Oh, I wonder who it is then. I got to do some searching.
Yelling at me saying, you tell Jeane Buffalo it's not better than Buffalo.
Oh, my God. We're going to argue. Before this Jets-Bills game, we're going to argue for 5 minutes on this show about the goddamn Bills press box spread. It's not that good.
Yes, it is.
I hate how much you love it.
Yes, it is. JJ, it is. You know what? Ignore him. He's a little whatever. Hey, JJ, thanks for joining us. So much fun. It was great talking after a win, my friend. And you won money.
I know. I bring the good vibes. What can I tell you?
This is great. I won money just being with you. All right, guys. Thank you all for joining us on this episode of Jets Final Drive. Once again, you can find our audio version of Jets Final Drive on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. So for Connor Hughes, for JJ, I'm Jeane Coakley. See you Monday to recap the Jets-Rams matchup. And Buffalo should be hot.